Hey there, fellow public servants. You know that feeling, right?
Yeah.
Of just constantly like swimming upstream, limited resources, tons of competing priorities, and always that pressure to deliver,
Yeah,
meaningful results for our communities.
for sure, for sure.
So today, we're diving into a method that might just be the life raft we need.
Ooh, I like that.
Shape Up.
Okay.
Have you heard of this?
I have heard of Shape Up, yeah. It's a project management approach developed by the software company Basecamp.
Oh, yeah.
And what's really fascinating is how it flips the script on traditional project planning. Instead of starting with scope and then trying to cram it into a time frame.
Right.
Shape Up focuses on a fixed time budget first.
Yeah. Okay. So it's kind of like saying, all right, we have 6 weeks.
Yeah,
What is the most impactful thing we can achieve in that time?
exactly.
It almost sounds radical, right?
It can be a little bit radical, but I think it's a good radical.
Yeah.
It's the right amount of radical.
Right, because think about how often in public service, especially, projects get bogged down
Totally.
by scope creep-blown deadlines.
Yes.
And just,
It never ends.
yeah, it never ends.
And this fixed time variable scope concept is really that bedrock foundation
Right.
of Shape Up. And it forces you to make those tough choices up front
Yeah.
and really prioritize what matters.
Totally. So let's unpack this a little bit.
Okay, let's do it.
And let's start with this idea of shaping work
Yeah.
before we dive into building.
Love it.
Okay, so imagine you're tasked with, improve citizen engagement.
Oh, yeah. Big one.
Huge goal, right?
Absolutely.
Where do you even begin?
So many places to start.
So many places, so many rabbit holes.
Right.
Instead of jumping into solutions like Shape Up encourages you to really zoom in on the problem.
Yes. Define it with laser focus.
Right.
What specifically is hindering engagement? Is it lack of awareness of services? Is it difficulty accessing information? Is it something else entirely?
Yeah.
And equally important,
Yeah.
how much time and resources, what they call appetite.
Okay.
Appetite.
Are you realistically able to dedicate to this?
I like that appetite.
Yeah.
Because I can already hear some of our listeners being like,
Oh, yeah.
but we're public servants.
Yeah. We always want to serve.
Our appetite is endless.
Yes. Our appetite for serving is definitely endless.
But realistically, we do have to work within some constraints.
For sure.
Right.
Absolutely. And that's where appetite becomes this really powerful tool.
Okay.
It's about aligning leadership stakeholders and teams
Right.
around this shared understanding of what is achievable. You might want to revamp the entire citizen portal.
Oh, yeah.
But if your appetite only allows for 6 weeks,
Right.
you need to shape a solution that fits within those constraints.
I love how this challenges us to think differently.
Yeah.
It's about being strategic. It's about delivering value, even with limited resources.
Right.
Which is often the case
Always.
in the public sector.
And it helps avoid those rabbit holes. Yes, that can just plague public service projects.
Oh, for sure.
That feeling when
Yeah.
you start with this clear goal
Right.
and then 6 months later,
Yeah.
you're just lost in this maze of
Yeah.
committees and revisions.
Yeah.
And you're like, what happened to my initial vision?
I know. And it happens
I think all the time.
all the time.
All the time.
So the source material actually has this great example
Oh, yeah.
of how Basecamp used this shaping process
Okay.
to create something really valuable in a short time frame.
Yeah, I'm curious.
The dot grid calendar.
The Dockery calendar.
They were getting just bombarded with requests for this full-blown calendar future,
Wow. Yeah.
which could have easily turned into this 6-month behemoth.
Which in the world of public service, 6 months can sometimes feel like a decade.
Yeah, sometimes it does, especially when you're dealing with,
Right. Constantly shifting priorities.
right,
Limited budgets.
limited budgets.
Oh, absolutely. So instead of trying to cram a 6-month project into 6 weeks,
Right.
they took a step back and I said, okay, what is the core need here? And what they discovered was that a lot of users just needed a simple way to visualize
Oh, interesting.
free spaces
Right.
on a calendar.
Right. Just when am I free?
Yeah,
I don't need to know all the details.
exactly. And that shift
Yeah.
in perspective, I think, is key.
Yeah.
Because it allowed them to define a scope
Yeah.
that was both achievable and valuable
Right.
within their fixed time budget.
Perfect.
And the results,
Yeah, what was it?
the dot grid calendar,
Okay.
simple, user-friendly solution
Yeah.
that they were able to develop in just 6 weeks.
Wow.
I think that's a really powerful lesson for us in public service.
I think so too.
We don't always need these
Yeah,
complex, time-consuming solutions.
totally.
Sometimes a well-shaped,
Yeah.
focused approach
Yes,
can deliver a much bigger impact
absolutely.
in a fraction of the time.
For sure, for sure.
And that leads us to another key aspect of Shape Up,
Okay, I'm excited.
which I think resonates deeply with the public sector:
Okay.
targeted risk reduction.
I like this.
Okay, think about all the times a project has gone off the rails
I don't want to think about it.
because of unforeseen
It's
problems.
painful.
Don't get me started, right?
Right.
It's like every project comes with its own Pandora's box
It's
of
a-
surprises.
Yeah.
A critical vendor backs out a new regulation,
Wow.
throws a wrench in your plans,
Uh-huh.
or the public feedback reveals a major flaw in your design.
Oh, no.
Can be incredibly frustrating.
The worst.
And that is where Shape Up gets really interesting.
Okay, tell me more.
Because instead of just hoping for the best and dealing with problems as they
The
arise,
classic.
it emphasizes actively identifying
Yes.
and addressing risks
Oh,
before
I like this.
work even begins.
So it's about being proactive.
It's about being proactive, not reactive.
I love that.
And that's something I think we could all benefit from in public service.
100%.
So they give this example
Okay.
from their own work,
Uh-huh.
the To-Do Groups project.
The To-Do Groups project.
And before handing it off to the development team,
Okay.
they realized there was a potential issue with displaying completed items.
Interesting.
It wasn't like a deal breaker,
Okay.
but it was something that could easily have caused delays and frustration later on.
Down the line.
So what did they do? Did they halt the project? Go back to the drawing board?
That's what's so smart about this approach.
Okay.
They didn't try to come up with the most elegant solution right then and there.
Right.
They made a conscious decision to simplify that aspect of the project,
Okay.
focusing on mitigating the risk and keeping that core functionality on track.
So they essentially said, we're not going to let this one potential issue derail
Yes.
the entire project.
Right.
We'll address it in a way that keeps us moving forward.
Exactly. It's about making strategic choices and accepting that not everything needs to be perfect on the first try,
Right.
which I think is a really important lesson for us in public service.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
We're often so focused on getting things right,
Right.
that we can get paralyzed
Yes.
by perfectionism.
100%.
But sometimes
Yeah.
a good enough solution
Yes.
delivered on time
Uh-huh.
is much more valuable than a perfect solution that never sees the light of day.
Could not agree more.
Right.
Yes. And this kind of brings us to another principle that I think really resonates with public servants empowering teams and honoring commitments.
Honoring commitments.
Yeah, we talk a lot about, empowering frontline workers and fostering this culture of innovation in public service.
Right.
But, how often do we actually give teams the autonomy to really make decisions and solve problems
Right.
without all those layers of bureaucracy and approvals?
That's a great point.
Yeah, and it's where Shape Up takes a very different approach.
Okay.
It emphasizes handing off entire projects to teams,
Whole projects.
giving them that ownership and that freedom to really figure out
Wow.
how to best achieve the desired outcome.
So instead of handing down this list of predefined tasks and micromanaging every step of the way,
Right.
we're trusting our teams to be the experts.
Yes.
And giving them the space to do what they do best.
100%. It's about setting those clear boundaries, like the scope and the time frame.
Right.
And then really letting the team run with it.
Okay, so this might sound a little unsettling
Yeah.
to some managers out there who are used to having a tight grip on the reins.
For sure. Yeah.
But I think it's a crucial shift in mindset if we want to truly empower our teams and unleash their creativity.
Absolutely. I agree. And this leads us to one of the most intriguing and maybe controversial aspects of Shape Up,
Ooh.
the circuit breaker.
The circuit breaker.
Yeah, have you heard of this?
I have. And I'll admit, the first time I read about this, I thought it was a little harsh.
Okay, tell me why.
It's this idea that if a team doesn't finish a project
Yeah.
within that fixed time frame, the default response is not to extend the deadline.
You're not alone in feeling that way.
Really?
It goes against everything we've been conditioned to believe about project management.
I know.
But think about it. How often does extending a deadline actually lead to a better outcome?
In my experience, not very often.
Right.
Usually it just leads to more stress, more scrambling, and just a lower quality product in the end.
Exactly. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a broken bone.
Ooh.
It might cover up the problem temporarily,
Right.
but it doesn't actually address the root cause.
So the circuit breaker
Yeah,
It forces a different kind of conversation.
it does.
If a team isn't going to meet the deadline, they have to hit the circuit breaker and reassess.
And this can be incredibly valuable
How so?
because it might mean reshaping the project, prioritizing different aspects, or even making the tough decision to pull the plug altogether.
It's about acknowledging that sometimes, even with the best intentions and the best effort, things don't always go according to plan. And it's better to make a strategic course correction than to
Yes.
keep pushing towards a deadline that's just no longer realistic.
100%. And this principle of honoring commitments, it goes beyond internal deadlines, too. It's
Oh,
about being accountable to the public
oh, interesting.
and delivering on the promises that we make.
Oh, for sure.
So think about, a project to improve access to social services.
Okay.
If we're missing deadlines and keep pushing back the launch date, it's not just an inconvenience,
Right
but a
on.
real impact on people's lives.
That's a great point.
Yeah, and the circuit breaker mindset can really help us make those tough decisions
Right.
in a way that prioritizes both the needs of the project and the needs of the people we serve.
Okay, so let's talk about something that is just a constant struggle
Yeah.
in public service, communicating progress effectively.
Yeah.
So we're often asked, what's the status of this project?
Yep.
And it can feel like we're stuck between these two extremes.
Totally. On the one hand, you have those detailed task lists and Gantt charts. Yes.
That try to map out every single step.
Oh.
But they're often outdated the minute they're created.
And then on the other hand, you have these vague pronouncements of it's in progress or we're working on it,
Yep.
which don't really give anyone a clear understanding of where things stand.
No, and this is where ShapeUp offers a very refreshing alternative, the hill chart.
The hill chart. When I first read about the hill chart, I was a little skeptical.
Okay.
It seemed almost too simple.
Yeah, I hear that.
But the more I thought about it, the more I realized its brilliance.
Okay, tell me more.
It's a visual metaphor
Yes.
that everyone can understand, regardless of their technical expertise.
I love that.
So instead of getting bogged down in these granular tasks or
Sure.
those dreaded percentage estimates,
Oh, yeah.
that never seemed to reflect reality.
Would they ever?
The hill chart uses this simple visual
Yeah.
to communicate progress.
So how does it work?
Okay, so imagine a hill.
Okay, a hill. I got it.
At the beginning of a project, you're climbing uphill. Okay.
There are a lot of unknowns.
Yeah.
You're exploring different paths. You're making discoveries along the way.
Right.
Then as the team starts making progress and solving problems, they begin to crest the hill.
They're getting there.
They can see the path forward more clearly, and the finish line is in sight.
They can see the top.
Exactly. And finally, as they wrap up the remaining tasks and kind of polish that final product, they're coasting downhill toward completion.
Oh, I love that visual.
It's such a powerful visual because it captures that natural flow of a project.
Us.
And it communicates progress in a way that I think everyone can grasp intuitively.
100%.
And what I love about it is that it allows managers to provide support without micromanaging.
Okay, how so?
They can glance at the hill chart and immediately see where things are getting stuck or where a team might need additional resources.
Right, they can get a sense of where things are at.
Exactly. It fosters this culture of trust and transparency, which I think is so important in public service.
Absolutely, I agree. Now, you mentioned earlier that ShapeUp has some elements that might feel a little controversial,
Yeah.
especially in the context of public service.
Right.
And one of those is the way they approach bugs.
Bugs the bane of our existence.
Right. In a world where we're constantly striving for error-free service delivery.
Right.
The idea of not prioritizing every bug might seem a little counterintuitive.
I can already hear the gasps
Oh, yeah.
from our listeners.
Totally.
But before everyone panics,
Yes.
let's unpack this a little bit.
All right, let's do it.
ShapeUp doesn't advocate for ignoring bugs altogether.
No, of course not.
Of course, if there's a major system outage
Right.
or a critical security vulnerability, you address it immediately.
Right away.
But the vast majority of bugs
Yeah.
aren't showstoppers.
Right.
They're annoyances, inconsistencies, or these minor glitches that,
Right.
while not ideal,
Yeah.
don't prevent the core functionality from working. And what ShapeUp suggests is that we shift our mindset from reactive bug fixing
Yeah.
to more strategic bug management.
Oh, interesting.
So instead of interrupting the flow of a 6-week cycle every time a bug pops up,
Right.
they advocate for using those cool-down periods between cycles
Okay.
to address bugs in a more dedicated way.
So it's not about ignoring them.
Right.
It's about being more intentional and strategic about when and how we adhere them.
Exactly.
I love that.
And this frees up teams
Yeah,
to focus on delivering new value during those crucial 6-week cycles,
right.
which ultimately I think leads to a better overall experience for the public.
I agree. It's about recognizing that sometimes fixing every tiny bug
Right.
can actually hinder our ability to deliver meaningful progress.
Right. So it's about picking your battles.
It is now another challenge.
Oh, there's more.
There always
Oh, there's
is.
more challenges.
That, I think, resonates with everyone in public service,
Right.
is this like constant influx of new ideas, requests, and feedback
Oh, yeah.
that can derail even the most well-planned project.
Absolutely. It's like we're constantly being bombarded
Yes.
from all sides. Can you just add this one feature, or we need to address this urgent issue right now?
Right.
It's overwhelming, and it's easy to get pulled in a million different directions.
Totally. And ShapeUp offers this deceptively simple but incredibly powerful solution. They don't.
Like they just ignore all that feedback.
Not exactly. They advocate for what they call letting the storm pass.
Letting the storm pass.
Yeah.
So instead of reacting immediately to every new idea or every new request,
Right.
they suggest taking a step back, letting the dust settle, and then evaluating those ideas strategically. So instead of getting swept away by every wave of new ideas, we're creating a space for thoughtful consideration.
Exactly. And here's the best part. All that feedback, all those new ideas, they don't just disappear into a black hole.
What are you doing?
They become fuel for the next round of shaping,
Oh.
so we can take all those insights, those pain points, those suggestions, and use them to shape even better projects in the future. It's a continuous cycle of learning and improvement.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
It resonates a lot with like the idea of being responsive to the needs of our community.
Right.
We're not just like shutting down input.
Yeah.
We're creating a structured way to gather it and prioritize.
For sure. For sure. If we step back and look at the core principles of ShapeUp,
Okay.
like shaping, before targeting risk reduction, empowering teams communicating progress effectively,
Yeah.
it's really about moving away from that reactive,
Right.
always on firefighting mode
Oh, yeah.
that's so prevalent in public service.
All the time.
Yeah.
Right.
It's about embracing a more deliberate, strategic, and ultimately more impactful way of working.
I like that.
Yeah.
And it's about shifting our mindset,
Mhm.
from how do we get all this done
Mm.
to what's the most valuable thing we can achieve with the time and resources we have.
100%. And I think that shift is really crucial if we want to truly make a difference in the lives of the citizens we serve.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a challenge.
Ooh, a challenge.
I like it.
Think about that problem
Yeah.
that keeps you up at night.
Hmm.
That initiative that's been stuck in the planning phase
Yep.
for far too long, or that service
Yeah.
that just isn't meeting the needs of your community.
Ooh.
What if you applied this shape-up mindset to that challenge? Imagine setting a fixed time frame, defining a clear scope, empowering your team, and communicating progress in a way that everyone understands.
Powerful stuff.
It might feel like a radical departure from the way things are usually done,
Oh.
but the potential rewards, I think, are enormous.
They are.
That opportunity to deliver real value to your community, to boost team morale, and to reclaim a sense of control over your work.
Yes, to all of that.
So go out there, fellow public servants,
Yeah.
and shape up some truly impactful work.
I love it.